I think one thing for investors to think about in this that I very rarely hear discussed is just I guess beneficial nature of the cross-pollination between these different things because, you know, pursuing intelligence in artificial intelligence in the realm of language models versus in the realm of the real world are at this point in time still two similar but very separate endeavors, and they
Right.
attract different types of people. They involve some different approaches, but there is a lot of carryover from one to the other. And lest people forget, a lot of like Tesla has transformed itself into an artificial intelligence company. That transformation really sits on the back of Elon's starting of OpenAI as a separate entity from Tesla to begin with.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next Big Future. I have a great guest with me, Hans C. Nelson, who often works with Farzad on his channel. And he also has his own YouTube channel. Welcome, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Looking forward to being here.
Yeah. So today I'm going to present some things about how I think superintelligence is going to play out, why I'm confident it's going to happen, what's already happened, and what they're going to build, and then what it's all going to mean. So I'll present that quickly, about 20 minutes or so, and then Hans will and I will discuss it, and then we can also interrupt me at any point to discuss the thing I'm talking about. So how superintelligence will happen. Obviously, it will be a seminal thing if we have machines that are smarter than people. Key proof I have the timing and then what it will be like. So I'll go over what has been done and what needs to be done. The scaling, which is the foundation of a lot of these things, all these multi-billion-dollar bets have been based upon what people believe about the scaling of AI. And then there have been various algorithmic improvements that give me confidence in what's going to go on. And for all these things, if you're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, you have to make hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars in order to pay for it. And I'm going to discuss those markets. And then there's challenges of if we can do it, even if someone would pay for it, we still have to be able to build it and still do it. There's execution aspects to that. So just for people who don't know me, I'm Brian Wang, investor and advisor to startups, a futurist, and I've written over 30,000 articles on Next Big Future. On my website. So Jensen Huang got on stage early 2024, late 2023, and said that they've already improved AI compute by 1 million times over the last 10 years, and he see it improving another 1 million times over the next 10 years. So by 2033, 2034, he expects us to have gotten 1 million times better. And I have a breakdown of how I see that playing out. So the first two green lines are basically where we've already been done. Many companies, OpenAI, XAI, Tesla, have had 20,000 H100 chips. Each have 4 petaflops. You multiply that straight together, you get 80 exaflops. So that's basically where we were when Jensen made that statement. Then since that point, a few months later, various groups are putting together 100,000 H100s at various stages. I think Microsoft and OpenAI already have it. Meta probably has it, and now XAI is building theirs. And they're getting to work, and that would be 400 exaflops, and that uses 130 megawatts of energy. Elon said that they're going to get 300,000 B200s by mid 2025. I assume they get that stood up late 2025. And then that would be 6 petaflops because each B200 is 20 petaflops, so 5 times better than an H100. And then I presume there'll be an intermediate step where scarcity of getting those chips, then when they get 100,000, they'll try to run a model. It'll be roughly the same energy as the H100. And so that'll be 2 zettaflops. So I'm presuming that as you go 5x, 3x on each step, it would be worthwhile to run a new model creation training exercise with that setup. And then at Computex in Taiwan in June, Jensen discussed the Rubin chip, after the Blackwell B200 chip. We don't know how powerful it'll be. Just based on the steps that we're seeing, I'm ballparking 100 petaflops for the Rubin chip, also more energy efficient. So the speculation would be that if you went from 100,000 to 300,000, that you'd have a million Rubins in a fully built out Rubin system. And that would be 100 zettaflops, roughly 2027, based on the release of Rubin chips starting around 2026. And again, it needs to be a step at around a quarter million with 24 zettaflops. And then after that, you'd have some next chip, again, at a step up, 1.2. There'd be two more cycles of this to get to 80 yottaflops, or the million times more powerful than the 80 exaflops. Um, any quick comment about this
And
scaling?
so, yeah, just here we're talking about the amount of compute that you expect XAI specifically to have, correct?
Right, right. I
Okay.
presume everyone else is going to, who's a player like OpenAI, Microsoft, would try to do the same thing. The advantages that I see XAI probably having would be on the energy side, that there's issues to deploy gigawatts and gigawatts of power. But if you have the budget to do it, you can achieve that goal. But there are challenges around getting this many chips to work and getting the energy all in one location to make this happen. China could
Yeah.
probably do it. XAI, Tesla could do it. And then others, I presume they'll send the money and they'll make it happen. Um, so,
So you could
so
just use this as basically a stand-in for whoever, like a leading AI effort.
a
One of
leading
the,
AI effort. I
yeah.
presume there'll be one in China. There could be one in Kuwait. There could be one in Saudi. There could be one, several in the United States, Microsoft, Meta. And this is so one of the other factors is that if you have 3 million next chips and they're each costing about $50,000 each, assuming things stay the same, then that's $150 billion. So if you're going to do this, keep going at it, you're going to need to get a pretty powerful revenue engine to match this, because as you start scaling up, you start losing. It's limitations to reach. You can't just keep spending without making the money. And I'll say that they can make the money. I'll make that case later on. So superintelligence, I'm saying, so everyone talks about the compute and the energy. I'm saying that based on what we've seen, looks solvable up to 2030 and maybe beyond, right? That's just a matter of like spending that huge amount of money and being able to pay for it, but achievable, feasible thing. I think the business model, AI experts and people and the data are more important than the compute and energy. Although those are the immediate thing that we see. As we move further along, it's having the business model to support this whole thing.
Yeah,
And
I
also
mean,
the
because you're
yeah, right,
talking about trillions of dollars worth of spend
right.
total.
And right,
If you're doing hundreds of billions a year and you're at that for a number of years in a row, then
yeah,
it doesn't take you very long, especially if you've got a few different people kind of all on that pace.
right.
Just a couple of years worth of competition at this level, you reach trillions of dollars pretty quickly.
Right. And the people aspect of this thing, the people make the algorithms. So if you have your hotshot Ilya Sutskever person, then he could make this 100 times easier, 1,000 times easier by coming up with two great algorithms that do something, fantastic, make things more efficient. So that's why the people, and that's the XAI thing, is important. People don't know that XAI is Elon Musk's AI company, which he set up separately, and has raised several billion dollars, valued at $22 billion. OpenAI valued at $80 billion plus. And Elon was involved in setting up OpenAI as well. And he recruited the key people on that. So recruiting the world-class AI talent is something that Elon's shown he can do. And there's talking about investing $5 billion from Tesla into XAI. The justification, in my mind, is not that they can duplicate OpenAI, get to $80 billion valuation, go beyond $200 billion valuation, is that superintelligence worth trillions of dollars. And it is the bet that Elon can form the team that has a good shot of making that happen or being competitive with that to get trillions of dollars in that aspect. So that is for don't know, people in the Tesla community have been discussing the issue, should we or should not invest Tesla money into XAI, and I'm a firm believer in yes, that we should for
So
superintelligence. Yeah, good.
let's go down a short rabbit hole here
Yeah.
briefly and just ask you, what do you make of what's seeming to be the unraveling of that level of talent
Mhm.
at OpenAI? And I mean, we'll just have to see what it is that they can deliver over the next year, but pretty much all of the leading edge research minds that were there have left or are on sabbatical.
Right.
Um, and what opportunity does that leave for competitors?
So this goes to the business model aspect of it. So there's a business model of how you run your company, and then the business model of how you reward key people within your company, right? So the reason we could not fold XAI into Tesla was because these super people, these special AI people, can make billions of dollars. Anthropic had two of the early people who left OpenAI and went off and then got billions of dollars of funding for $1 billion company. So they said, hey, I'm doing key stuff with OpenAI, but I'm not getting compensated to the level of billions of dollars. This is my chance to do it. So they leave. So similarly, recently they lost the president of OpenAI, um, Brockman, and the product lead, and then some other talent from OpenAI. So within the structure of OpenAI, 49% is owned by Microsoft, and then there's other big investors inside there. So then employees typically within a Silicon Valley model get 10 to 20% of the company, and then you're splitting that up. And I think there's about 1,000 some people at OpenAI. So even if you had like 20 key people, each one is not going to get more than 1%, right? So they think, oh, well, that's 1% of $80 billion. That's $800 million, right? That's a huge amount. But they can say, I believe I'm more important than that. I believe that I and my team, I can get like 10% of, me and five guys, we each get 10%, 50% of a company, 50% for funding. And so I want to go off and get 10 times more, 20 times more, especially if OpenAI is thinking, you're not even our top guy. You think you're the top guy. They're thinking, nah, you're, you know, not my first string guy or whatever, right? So then you're being, in your view, dissed by them, right? So then you say, that's not, so basically it's about billions of dollars. They think they're worth billions of dollars. They can go off and get it from various VCs, and so they leave, right? And that's a constant problem for this thing. Obviously, that by deduction, my deduction is that within OpenAI, they're delayed on getting GPT-5 out. They have not had steps up in their valuation. So now people are getting antsy, frustrated. They may be within the thing, think you guys are doing all wrong, or other issues on the delays. So the more they kind of like weren't steaming ahead. Oh, if we were steaming ahead, I'm going to get from 80 billion to a trillion, right? Then people stay. Okay, I'm going to get another 10x, right? So there, it's not a good indicator of what's going to happen with GPT-5, right? Although you know, Microsoft CTO was saying DD5 is looking great, some things, but it's still delayed. If you're not, you're going to make an advance with GPT-5 just because of these scaling laws. But if you're not making other huge advancements, then you're not ahead of everyone else. And Perplexity put together something pretty quickly with 20 guys. So that's my view. Any your comment about that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that in the context of, what is the edge that XAI and Elon would have in that competition, but we'll come back in that because I know that's part of what we're getting to, so I won't pull us into that part of the conversation now. We can just go back to the slide.
Okay, let me get to that and I'll try and go through that. Anyway, so the experts and people, like we're discussing, we'll come back to it. So I say AI will solve agents and interfaces, robotaxi, human bot, most jobs, but there are limitations on superintelligence. Basically, around if we have no data to build upon, then you're still not going to get an answer, and still be bottlenecks, even if we're kind of beyond people. Um, and then, yeah, so data, no data. If we don't know, no matter how much we collect together of what we currently are at, we can't solve it, right? We can't solve fast lane travel because we got no data to do anything with it, right? And then we have bad or limited data. So when we get to human intelligence, we'll push science and the tech frontier together. People with AI working together can move things forward faster, but the key will be creating profitable data slash AI flywheels, where I'm profitably gathering the data and doing stuff, which is one of the advantages of XAI is that Elon, one of his special skills, that he can figure out how to create business model flywheels that can gather more data and stuff. Like he did that for the Tesla cars, for FSD, to road robotaxi, far more profitably than anyone else has done. Everyone else is spending, $2 billion, $3 billion a year, losing it and making only a few million, maybe now tens of millions of dollars. While Elon has gotten to make a billion or multi-billions from autopilot and FSD sales, right? So he has a better business model. So that's one of the things that he has, where he comes in and fixes and creates a business model.
And
And
he's
then you have
also done that with SpaceX. Just think about the amount of money that it's going to take to start colonizing Mars. And, for
right,
the most part, you're not going to be able to get that just from fees for transportation. And so that's where they were, casting about and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to fund this thing? And Starlink
right.
was the answer to that question. And so now they've got this massively, it's scaling and it's growing. It's already profitable from what I understand. And probably on its way to just being a massive cash generating asset that will then do the funding for the very ambitious goals that Elon has for SpaceX and the settling of the moon, the settling of Mars, those types of things.
That's right. So for people who are not familiar, um, SpaceX had to beat entire countries in terms of the launch industry. Before they came along, Russia and Europe were the leaders, as well as China. And now Russia has basically and Europe have been squeezed out of commercial launch for everything except the occasional military launch as virtually a government launch. And then China has some commercial launch, but even they can't compete in terms of the number of launches that SpaceX and Starlink do. And Starlink has launched 6,000 some satellites now, and it has like 80% of the satellite and payloads up in orbit. And as much money as China puts at it, their business model being inferior cannot match what now SpaceX slash Starlink is now profitable doing. So I'll now get into the hardware aspect of it. That I had that little chart before showing the scaling up to 3 million Rubin chips. So the Rubin I'm saying is about 100 petaflops. This is some pictures of the chips that were on the slide at Nvidia. 100 petaflops being a million of those. Um, and TSMC that makes all the advanced chips has said that they can get to better system on wafer chips. I won't go too much detail, but basically various things in their roadmap get to 40 times the power within by 2027. So getting to, saying, oh, going from 20 petaflops up to 100 petaflops up to 500 petaflops on each individual chip is something that is achievable based on the technical details that TSMC seems to be saying that they'll achieve. And then they'll also do stuff around solving the bottlenecks of like they can only make 3 million to 4 million chips that everyone has to ration out. They're going to double and triple and 10x that supply of chips with supply chain things and other technological improvements. Again, a rabbit hole that would take time to go down. They're doing stuff like going to make a rectangular wafer that would have 3 times the area of it. So the chips get bigger, they'll again solve that. So huge technological lift to make this happen. But justification that will happen. More details around how that works. AI algorithms. So people were saying we can't. The AI is a large language model, no good at math. DeepMind came in second in the World Math Olympiad, or got to a silver medal position, not necessarily second, using alpha proof and alpha geometry, a mix of large language model with the alpha zero Go solving type system. So basically, math and reasoning are solvable. Ilya Sutskever, who left OpenAI, won the talent leak that we discussed. He's set up safe superintelligence. We don't know the details of it, but he doesn't seem like someone who will just make stuff up, that he thinks that there's the path to superintelligence with a tight team. And still at OpenAI, they're working on something called Strawberry, which might be something related to that Q-star system of a reasoning breakthrough. But as we've seen, many Google, others are working on reasoning breakthroughs. Microsoft, which works with OpenAI, has a 1-bit model, which reduces the size of the weights within the model to 1 bit, which again reduces the memory sizes, reduces energy. Again, a step up in improvement of what we can get from the existing systems. And then there's another algorithm that's worth of note where they're using teams of faster AI. So a bunch of smaller AI working together faster to, like, instead of doing one pass on the model or question, they do several passes, they debate it, and then come up with a better answer. Just like teams of people can come up with a better answer, this is being done with AI. And along this path is that the 4.0 mini is a cheaper, faster model. So that's conducive to teams of AI. If I can make 100 models cheaper than one big model and the results are better, then I can get better result. Ardneri Karpathy, ex-head of Tesla AI, and also worked at OpenAI, he said the current models are undertrained by a factor of 100 to 1,000 times. So that shows that even if we kept things static at the amount of data that we have and the amount of, and just increase the compute, then if we increase compute by 100 times, within 6 months, I can train up a model that will be better. Because if I just kept going, I'd be better. They chose not to because of time and money constraints. So if we start hitting the wall, then we can still pick up this last level of improvement, which is significant. 100 times under training is significant, would get a far better model. So now it's this. So data limits. Previously, this Epoch AI was discussing that the limits of our current data, which is all the easily accessible data on the internet and some other data electronically, would cap out at 2024. Based on changes in what we're doing in the industry, they're now thinking that the current data limits can go to 2028, 2032. So again, we will get more data from audio and visual, but that we're still doing more with the current data. And people thinking that we hit limits have been wrong. Go ahead.
I was just gonna, make sure that for listeners, they understand that this is talking about limitations of just text data. So this is really in the context of LLM training, which is only, one aspect of what an artificial superintelligent system will be and will be capable of. And so there's, you know, of course, quite a bit of text, but there's a lot more other data out there, as you
Mhm.
referenced. We've got video data that we need to start being able to learn from and learn sparsely from. And yeah,
Mhm.
there's just so much low-hanging fruit that is left for us
Mhm.
to be able to solve and make use of more valuable data.
And also, there's two things I want to say about data. One is that private data, behind firewalls in corporate databases, is probably about 10 times more than what's freely available. And also, the quality of data is not the same. So that they're figuring out what is more valuable data in the training space. And the training data is not necessarily the same as the inference data. Like I could, figure out how to learn math, but it may not be the same as I'm going to apply it to some problem where I need to know something else. So there's nuances within the data that is being determined and figured out now. What is the truly valuable data? What would be the data that'd be worth trying to artificially create more of synthetic data? So again, a complex question that we go to another talk. So the companies are making money with this thing. Andreessen Horowitz, a big VC, says about $5 billion in enterprise spending on that, and it's going to increase, and they're getting some value out of it. Glean AI is a company that's worth about $2 billion valuation, raised some money. They're doing search within enterprises where they search like email, Slack, other stuff like that, and people are paying for this. It improves productivity. This is I think James Fang, Nvidia guy, he talked about that we're going into the agent era, where we're not just answering questions, but this digital virtual agents will go answer questions. And in terms of what those AI agents be like, people may have missed this. This is a Microsoft VASA one. They have not released this. But basically, you get one picture of a person, one audio clip, short audio clip. And basically, it does what, if people remember the movie Terminator 1, that it would, the Terminator would listen to someone saying a voice recording, on a cell phone or a phone, and then they could then mimic that person. That's basically what this thing does. It can start mimicking someone in a fraction of a second, and it can show emotion and everything like that. So um, and there's other companies working on similar kind of avatars. Um, but this is one of the best ones. Um, so basically, we're going to go to World Digital Agents. They can look like us. They can even look like young me. I can give a clip of like young me, 20-year-old me, talking and without any stuttering and stuff like that. So that's what the communication will look like. The interfaces, like I said, solve agents and solve interfaces is what's going to happen with it. And also they'll speak any language because there was just also the OpenAI voice thing talking about instant translation between, English and Japanese and everything like that. So, and then they can do that with pictures like the Mona Lisa. You can have it talking and stuff. Um, Another thing is they'll solve search. There was analysis by Altimeter Capital about how that search would happen, and Nvidia says that they'll solve search. So the profitable aspect of building these things is that it will solve big, valuable problems. $80 billion, $100 billion a year from search. AI will do that. In terms of progress between different systems, you have GPT 3.5, zero shot, which means I'll start writing code, write down, no going back to correct, and then we're getting 48% correct on this human eval coding benchmark. GPT-4 got 67%, so it got over 50% better. But then if you do stuff like try 10 times and try to correct stuff, then you can get 95% even with the current models, right? So this is why I think that they'll solve coding, is that they're already doing 95% with it. And there's something called agentic workflow with Andrew Ng, where basically then they work on not just coding problems, but business problems, where they go through and say, let me correct my draft and then get to better answers. So again, if I'm faster and cheaper, this can be a way to get to hopefully 100% correct answers where it matters for business and for software. So for software, that, according to Gartner, is a $1 trillion, over $1 trillion a year industry. IT services, $1.5 trillion. Business consulting services is probably another few trillion dollars. So being able to solve the problem I just described in coding and with software are multi-trillion dollar opportunities, which would then be needed to be solved on a cloud of AI inference, where I'm running the model to get answers for these software consulting other problems, right? So this is the demand. And then I'm discussing that that's feasible to solve it. And then we'll need to solve it on AI inference systems the cheapest way possible. So inference, Nvidia claims 7 times the revenue for over 4 years using their latest chip, 24,000 tokens. So then I've run this model, basically that, or table, saying that based on solving those trillions of dollars of things, then if I have a billion chips from a combination of EVs and Teslabots, I'm just saying that you get them out there, then if I have $5 trillion a year of demand, that would mean $5,000 per chip to be solved. So I go at it like if it's $1,000 per chip, $5,000, $10,000, how many billions of dollars Tesla would make. But the end point also is that there would be 5 trillion, $10 trillion of IT/business demand for problems to be solved. And then you would then get it out to these chips to solve. And this would be a business model where you could get a billion chips out into the world doing stuff, answering problems. And Elon talked about 10 billion bots for $200 trillion. So per year of value that goes to, if it's doing human work, replacing human labor, then each bot producing $20,000 of value would be worth $200 trillion. So beyond just answering questions, if it's doing physical work, then you get to these huge multi-trillion-dollar valuations. So my distributed AI inference thing is possible to get millions and billions of AI 5 or other chips out there for Tesla. Other people can compete as well, but I think Tesla and XAI have an advantage on that. $5,000 per year per chip. Each chip would be in the petaflops range, 20 to 200 times more powerful than a regular laptop. And there'd be answers and actions that it would be doing, giving you answers, which is a valuation model of business, which I described, which could precede timing wise possible actions of like fixing your house, gardening so you have food. And it makes the energy problem less. I can get a billion chips out there distributed around into every household. If I have solar on my house generating 10 kilowatts, I can power that device. And so there's less of a problem than putting a terawatt of power in one location for a massive data center. And then this would be 10 to 100 times larger than the AI data center market. So that's basically it. I have other stuff on Teslabots, which we can discuss, but that's some of my, these have implications for both Tesla, XAI, and for the future of the world, which, you can discuss. You wanted to maybe discuss the XAI or other questions?
So one of the, I think, things that I was thinking about as we were going through the slides was just we'll use human eval in the coding. When you step back and look at this from a high level, that whatever, model it is that you're looking at, whether it's one of the chat GPTs, whether it's Llama 3, Claude, all of these models, when you're doing a task zero shot, essentially what that is, imagine that you were asked to write a program, but you had to just write whatever your first gut instinct for how to write that program would be.
Right,
And and you had to write the whole entire program from your one gut instinct.
right.
And so to think that, even GPT 3.5 was able to get almost 50% on that, and then now, GPT-4 could get up to almost 70% on that zero shot. I think people underestimate the importance and the power and the significance of being able to do that with just a snap reaction that
Right.
takes a few milliseconds to generate. And so, but
Mhm.
then it also leads you to the second line of reasoning was like, okay, if my initial gut reaction is all that I get, of course it's very difficult to be 100% accurate. Like I need some time to reflect on how do I proceed correctly and navigate the idea maze that is this program
Mhm.
to arrive at the correct destination. And that's where you need additional cycles. One of the reasons why that is not something that they immediately want to do, especially, several years ago, wanted to do with these models is because it was very expensive. Every millisecond worth of thinking was expensive because
Mhm.
it's running on these massive data centers, takes a lot of electricity using all this compute. And so as we drive down the cost of energy, as we, provide more power to these chips and make the chips more efficient and more powerful and all of these things, which like basically a lot of the presentation so far today has just been saying, yeah, Moore's law is going to continue to Moore's law for
Mhm.
the next 10 years. And if
Right.
you, you know, draw the logical conclusions that come from that, we will have the ability to solve problems that are significantly larger than we've ever solved before. And even though the numbers seem crazy, because they always seem crazy when you're talking about something that's exponential, we have been living through, 70 years of history now that
Mhm.
say that Moore's law, this is what it does, and this is what it
Right.
makes possible. So, all that to say, you know, one of the things that we're now able to actually do already is, especially on a substrate like Grok with a Q, the inference system that this company has come up with, where they're able to produce tokens significantly cheaper than any of the other competitors that I've seen at scale. That now it's a lot cheaper to do that chain of thought reasoning where you think about it and then think about it again and then think about it again and then all these other when they say mixture of agents or, like chain of thought reasoning, like all of these different things are just names for different strategies of how do you chain together a set of different thoughts to evaluate, am I proceeding in the right direction down an idea maze?
Right.
And we are very quickly, moving towards, if you take the fact that we can, with those snap decisions, do so well on a programming thing, what you've just proved is that you have the gray goo substrate that it takes to think intelligently. And now you're just trying to construct a way to operate the gray goo so that it is able to meet and then potentially exceed the performance of, human reasoning and intelligence. I guess at this point in time, maybe it would be good, Brian, for you to define, what is the definition of, everyone seems to have a different definition of what is AGI and what is artificial superintelligence, ASI.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, that will lead to further questions.
So for me, the AGI, artificial general intelligence, is basically being able to do um, everything that humans do, which would, I think, having it based on the metrics that we have, where it's like, can it pass some SAT test or something like that, is a um, a technical academic thing that doesn't matter as much in the real world, right? It's something that you would have to pass in order to do it. And they have other academic metrics like the Google proof, which is like not being able to answer the question with the Google search kind of thing, having those kind of questions answered. So again, more complicated questions. So I think it should be based upon my analysis here that basically that it's substantially replaced large swaths of um, business and software value, right? So getting a large chunk of the $80 billion search market, getting a large chunk of the $1 trillion software IT consulting market, business processes. So I would have a financial metric around that. Same thing for if it's could be done with Robotaxi and with Teslabot, that if you get it up to some $1 trillion valuation where it's basically displaced 20% of what we're doing, right? Then that, it getting to that, I would classify that as real world AGI, where it's like really taking business value out of it. So I would tie it to a business metric of trillions of dollars of value. I don't think I have to take it all per se, but that big chunk of it. Um, so so if I was to define it more sharply, I'd probably think 10% is a significant marker. That's going to when you have an adoption curve, and then the S curve of adoption, people are familiar with that.
Escape
Crossing,
velocity.
yeah, when you cross like 10%, then things have kind of changed. So I would say once you've crossed 10% of world GDP value with your AIs, then you basically got AGI, right? Um, Go ahead.
So then where is the breakover point for artificial superintelligence?
Artificial superintelligence, I would put at the other end of the S curve where basically gets to 90%. So when it's 90% and we've replaced or somehow altered the economy to the 9% level, then it's basically super intelligent. Then basically you've crossed over majority of humanity and
Hmm.
forced us to change, which we can then change and adapt and then work with it and then hold our place and do stuff. But if the old economy statically was that, then I would toss it there. So
Hmm.
then so it's crossing over the span of humanity is how I see that happening. So it then is less of an academic, can it get 90%, 100% on blah medical test. It's like, are you doing the work of a doctor as opposed to
Hmm.
can you test, simulate?
Yeah. Measuring it in productivity instead of
Right.
thoughts or yeah, in the abstract.
Right.
I like that. So I guess do we want to come back and talk about, okay, what is Elon doing with XAI? I guess what lens would you like to talk about that from, since I've participated in a number of discussions looking at it from a number of different angles.
Um, well, so repeating my view is that yes, definitely should be investing in that. I think um, more about that case is that previously, for people who weren't paying attention to it, there was a big thing about Elon's pay package, concern that he would take his future AI developments away from Tesla, and then that caused like $100 billion drop in the stock price of the company when that was most in doubt. And now we're talking about $5 billion. So it seems like we're getting cheap. That basically XAI is where a lot of Elon's future AI ideas are coming from. Because of my view that AI is this massive, world-changing potential thing that, and in a relatively short period of time, that we should want to get a piece of that. And again, the XAI can only be formed as its own company because of this issue of what do these super AI coders, scientists do? They want billions of dollars. So it needs to be in this structure like XAI, startup dedicated to create superintelligence and to have a bit,
Hmm.
enable some business plan around that. And Elon, you know, said, okay, the only way I can get these people is to stick into XAI. He says he has ideas beyond Teslabot and Robotaxi, and I believe him. So it seems to me that you will want to ride this thing to what I think is multi hundreds of thousands of trillions of dollars of payoff. So basically, where we're going to totally
Hmm.
change the world. And it's like, and also it's structure wise, if you didn't have this kind of cross ownership thing, like people, Dave Lee talked about, X.com, big holding company thing, it's too rigid based upon what the incentives need to be. Like, I need to give the AI superstars more money, right? So I need to have the flexibility to structure things so they're incentivized so we don't lose them, right? And just like, oh, it's not fair. Well, life's not fair, like, they're worth more, like I get
Hmm.
it, like I couldn't do what Ilya did. And so having this more complex holding structure where it's like you have this cross ownership, I think needs to be done. And also the cross ownership issue is it takes the lawsuits off the table. Oh, why do we give chips from Tesla to XAI? Why do we do this to that? Because all of the pieces of Elon's empire and the people who are working for him need to work together. We have to structure things this way where it's different companies, but there is a lot of crossover that's going to happen. And you need to make that flow smoothly. And a 10% or a 20% ownership structure, it's sufficient. It doesn't have to be, oh, I have to own 100%, which is
Hmm.
something in Silicon Valley people are used to. It's like you need to take, 20%, 50%, and they need to have the rest to incentivize the people who need to be incentivized. And so that's my point of view on it. And what's
Yeah,
your
and
thing?
I think one thing for investors to think about in this that I very rarely hear discussed is just the, I guess beneficial nature of the cross-pollination between these different things because, you know, pursuing intelligence in artificial intelligence in the realm of language models versus in the realm of the real world are at this point in time still two similar but very separate endeavors. And they
Right.
attract, different types of people. They involve some different approaches, but there is a lot of carryover from one to the other. And lest people forget, a lot of like Tesla has transformed itself into an artificial intelligence company. That transformation really sits on the back of Elon's starting of OpenAI as a separate entity from Tesla to begin with.
Yeah.
That watching OpenAI develop and flourish, and then actually asking. for some of the people who worked at OpenAI to then consult on projects that Tesla was working on at the time is what spawned the FSD project. And, Andrej Karpathy has spoken about this on podcasts publicly, that his introduction to Elon was through consulting work that he was asked to do for Tesla because, Elon was a significant stakeholder in OpenAI. And while he wasn't initially interested in working on the problem of full self-driving, he probably never would have applied to work at Tesla to solve this problem if it were not for becoming intrigued by it through the ask that Elon had to have him do some consulting work. I think that type of dynamic is likely to emerge also with XAI, where there will be some interplay between work that gets done by XAI as they're asked to consult on things for Tesla. And then at this point, I think there's an incredible opportunity also for a very mutually beneficial relationship between the two, that while XAI is kind of working on things that are more orthogonal to what Tesla's doing, or just in a different direction, but the real world data that Tesla has could be beneficial to XAI. And then, vice versa, large language models aren't really a thing that Tesla needs to be building themselves, but they are definitely things that can be useful inside of products that Tesla has. And so, they can work out a great deal together for XAI to be able to provide large language models or other types of intelligent agents to Tesla. And in return, Tesla can provide a very unique and valuable data set, because not only do we have all this video data from Tesla, but it has been enriched for literally decades at this point, over a decade, with labels. And that's, people don't often understand that it's not just raw data, it is labeled data that is the most valuable data. And, Tesla has just troves and troves of this operating in the real world. And that as we start deploying the Optimus bots, then we'll actually have whole new domains of data that are the same video data that can be annotated automatically. And so all of that information is going to be something that, uh, you know, if Google were to try to get into the humanoid robot space to have, to provide that type of data to whatever their DeepMind or, their Gemini, whatever their efforts are in AI, that would be a difficult thing to do. And XAI would have a leg up in their ability to acquire data, just because, the likelihood that Google's going to have a humanoid robot project that operates at the same size and scale that Tesla does is going to be low and limited. And so, yeah, I think that there's just so much mutual benefit for both of these companies, but I do think that they're differentiated enough that they deserve to be their own entities separately as well.
Right. So a few comments on that is that right now Tesla's getting close to 10 million cars deployed. Right now about like 7 million, so roughly 10 million. But by 2030, could if things go right, get toward 100 million. Each of those cars has hardware 3, hardware 4, and soon hardware 5, AI 3, AI 4, AI 5, and that deployed asset is, if you say $30,000 per car, $300 billion with 10 million, $3 trillion with 100 million. So it's this massive amount of deployment, which an OpenAI or Microsoft, as powerful as companies are, can't, you have to profitably be able to do. You have to sell your cars properly in order to get them out there. And so, and then the same thing with Teslabot is that you have to get, massive amounts of physical assets deployed, which goes to the foundation piece of the business models that Elon's creating, is that you have, something that is an asset that, and he had to make the choice. I'm going to include hardware 3, hardware 4, 7 years ago with every vehicle, even though it doesn't cost me money. So his investments were thinking years down the road. to what he's going to do. Um, and also, it's not just with Tesla and XAI; it's also with X. That X and XAI share data because the Twitter information text is something that is used most useful to XAI. It's going to get into financial payments, a PayPal like WhatsApp type system, which will then have financial data. And so, but then if you were to have it all in one thing, it would one, there would be issues with um, um, monopoly issues, data privacy issues. You have to keep things separate, but then you need to be able to have them work together. That Tesla works with SpaceX, and then all these pieces of the puzzle is basically like an entire economy of um, finance, transportation, space, satellites, banking. It's everything, and so, but it has to be logically um, aligned for I need to have these people here motivated this way, and we need to cooperate with these other guys and not get in trouble when we cooperate. So I think this looser structure, because also you may need to adjust how the structure works and having it, the pieces, the major pieces, separate, it is legally and business wise the best way to go. It is because if you try and lock it in, force a situation, that is all one piece. It because it's going to be so expansive across the economy. It just yeah.
Yeah.
It- it-
So I guess is the argument that you're making that artificial superintelligence will arrive, that all the pieces are in place essentially, and that it's basically inevitable? Or is it that a specific player is most likely to be the one to achieve that? Where do
so
you?
so I am biased around that because I do have quite a lot of Tesla shares and stuff like that. So I see the advantages with Tesla and XAI and stuff like that. They're coming somewhat behind on the pure AI side of things, but I think that getting to the major economic value points, not like, okay, can I make 10 bots work? Can I make some, answer some stuff and answer some small questions, but getting to the trillions of dollars evaluation that um, the advantage for Elon and his companies is that on the manufacturing side, if I want to get humanoid bots doing something that's going to generate trillions of dollars evaluation, all they have to do is make a couple hundred thousand, maybe 500,000 Tesla bots, get them into the Tesla factories, up production by, say, double, right? And then boom, then Tesla valuation goes up from, 1 trillion to 5 trillion by doing that because of how the financial aspects of that work. So no other company can do that. And also in terms of like, in theory, you could get 100,000, 5,000 robots into Toyota to do it, but then they did not make their factories with the processes where they can make rapid changes to adopt it. Tesla has, and they've got the unbox process designed around what human bots could do, right? So by Tesla being so agile that they can adjust their processes to meet the robots halfway or even more than halfway and take the advantages they have that they can get like 10x the productivity out of things by saying not only do I adopt it faster, but I will adjust how I do things to make it work better with those systems. So that's the advantage they have there. Also, the advantage they have in terms of getting products out there, in terms of um, Starlink dishes, in terms of uh, vehicle products, the fact that they're integrated on the hardware and air quote software side. I think Steve Jobs talked about it. That if you want to make great software and make great hardware, and that the combination of AI software with AI hardware, and the AI hardware is the bot that and getting to the chip side of things. That is, I think, a why they end up winning it. So then, in terms of your question about superintelligence, I believe that getting it to replace the current labor work is something that's achievable. We've seen that with the Aloha project at Stanford, where like three graduate students had robots with pincers able to cook meals and do stuff. I have some pictures around that, but basically so very little hardware, very little expense, and then able to solve that. And so that is a kind of proof point that all that will be solved in terms of getting the economic value, getting it so that we can have it do gardening, cooking, all the stuff around the house.
Well, and all of that doesn't necessarily, everything you just mentioned there doesn't necessarily pull in XAI. Obviously, there's opportunities for XAI to participate in those things. But what do you think the importance is of the mission of XAI to, understand the nature of the universe? Like, is that fundamentally necessary uh, ingredient for an effort to reach artificial superintelligence?
Yeah, I think there could be some aspects where it needs to do more in terms of a perfect robotaxi, that there could be gnarly issues toward the deeper into the ninth. I think we can get to 99.999 with the current approaches, but then getting beyond that may have issues. And then doing that for really great human robots, I think there are issues and problems there. And then um, getting that looped in where they're then cracking problems of science and advancing technology faster. I think there could be issues there in terms of like the quick use of XAI with applications we have now. Being able to talk fluently with our cars and our bots and giving them instructions and say, "Hey, I'm in the passenger seat, but hey, don't turn down that road. You're making the wrong turn, or pull over. I want to get out." Like being able to have that conversation with it so that it, even though I'm not behind the driver's wheel, I can still have control with that. That is something that XAI can deliver that will make the cars better, and also the having the intelligence around how it is making things more comfortable and doing stuff for
Mhm.
you in the car is something that I think XAI can help deliver. Um, and
Maybe
then
an easy way to communicate it for listeners is just like the Robotaxi or the Optimus bot, like those are labor.
yeah,
You're replacing a chauffeur, you're replacing a factory worker, and that the thing that XAI has the opportunity to bring to the table is not necessarily the physical laborer or the chauffeur, but something more like an engineer or a scientist or teams of engineers and scientists who are able to push the boundaries of coordination and technology and those types of things that obviously Tesla's doing very well already with their human talent, but augmenting their human talent with further tools.
right. And managers and planners and fleet management, they talked about I think 12.6 of FSD, full self-driving, having fleet learning, right? Where it would go down a dead end and say, hey, don't go down that dead end, or hey, there's a pothole here, other stuff like that. That there's building an entire worldview out of it, which I don't think is necessarily, part of the basic FSD system. I think that needs to have an XAI involved into making that kind of fleet coordination. I'm learning the whole world and also using it to learn the whole world. That I'm trying to develop a whole world model that helps me learn, world physics. And Elon talked about that the reality is scalable. That gathering that information and learning that from that is something that a yeah, the hardware, the bots and the cars are constantly sucking in information and learning stuff. And then what are they looking at? How are they learning it? Not just for driving, not just for certain human tasks, but in general, um, learning the world and going beyond that for a higher level insights.
There's an assumption that if we have these chips out there and they are capable of doing, some sort of inference, that they will do it. But if there's something else that is out there at the same time that can do it more efficiently, then, it stands to reason that a more efficient form of chips would do that inference, and really this is the tension between what is the correct solution long term for doing inference at scale? Is it a distributed compute platform like, millions of hardware, three AI 4, AI 5 computers kind of wherever, versus having something that's more centralized, token factory, that maybe uses 1/10 of the energy and runs much, much faster. Um, how do you think about that tension and the just like the business model and the economic case for doing inference in a distributed way in the future instead of in a centralized way?
I think the main issue is the constructability of it. Like it probably is valuable to, just like the training, you have a massive, it all looks like one big chip, it all looks like one big thing, even though it's like a million chips and a million stacks of memory. Um, but the distributed one, it fits probably with how you can run the model more efficiently in a smaller situation. There could be situations where you need to have a really big inference engine, and then you have to figure out they will make some large AI inference data centers. I think there are being made by then Grok is trying to make it a giant one. So there are problems where they need to really crunch on that big problem. But I think the vast majority of problems are long tail, smaller questions that a lot of people have. So that would fit with a distributed model. And also the whole um, spreading it out where I have a little bit of solar here, a little bit of battery, and then have a chip, let me have a billion, 10 billion, 100 billion of them spread around. Um, I think ultimately, they will, if we decouple from our current economics, then um, then it becomes like we'll just build it as fast as we can, and we can just suck in the materials and energy, and then the things automatically making stuff. Where the limitations around, am I? I'm spending $100 trillion, but money doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm just like building it because I can just send them off and they're replicating over there. Which I think would make sense to like build on Mars. I made a video on that. Or basically, you make a million gigafactories on Mars because they build 1, 2 gigafactories in the mines and for it, and so they have this massive uh, compute cluster on Mars covering the entire planet, and it's also making starships that they call like the whole solar system. That the limitations around can this thing make money? I'm just like sending a bunch of stuff, and they're just like it's like bacteria, and they're just like consuming all the resources and making it, but it's like it doesn't matter because it's off on its own, is sucking up all the energy. So it's just the energy is sitting there, the materials are just sitting there, and then we can just reorganize matter and create these things. So then the limitations go away. So at some point along in the transition from superintelligence to we have no limits, then and that could be as short as 20, 30 years. That basically once you have that seed of a city on Mars, that's basically the doorstep to an unlimited future. So we can get the whole solar system and get a million times more. Um, and so then that's where Elon says, and money has no meaning, right? Anyway, so answer the question is distributed makes sense a lot now and fits the problem. And we'll get a point where limitations go away.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
okay.
that's probably a good place to wrap up for today.
Thanks for joining me, Hans, and hope to do more videos with you and maybe with Farzad and stuff, and to discuss these topics some more. But thanks for joining me, and please join us next time. Please like and subscribe. Enjoy, watch Hans's channel, watch him with Farzad, and we'll talk next.